Welcome, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth to another episode of Disguised Coverage, part of the Cover One Sports Network. I am your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro_ANT. If follows aren't your thing, that's completely fine. I will gladly, instead of a follow, accept the pizza cutter that Nick Gage used on Chris Jericho last night on AEW Dynamite. So whichever is easier for you, a follow or the pizza cutter that Nick Gage used last night on AEW. But, to each his own. One might be easier for you to acquire or give than the other. I'm fine with either. Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Disguised Coverage titled Buffalo Bills Training Camp Kickoff. And I hope you have come into this episode with an understanding that we're going to be talking about Buffalo Bills training camp getting started. It started yesterday. Day one was yesterday, Wednesday. Day two was today, Thursday. Depends on how you maybe arbitrarily define officially, but we are officially in the midst of football season. Once camp starts, that for me is the kickoff, no pun intended. We've got guys practicing. We've got competition. We've got indicators of what this season is going to be. The preseason is right around the corner. The NFL regular season is right around the corner. We're about to be in full swing and in the full midst of the 2021 NFL season. And that always starts with training camp. We're going to go over some of the things that were said yesterday by Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, go over some of the standout or notable performances on day one and day two. And we're going to go over some of those things in the scope of what they mean in a vacuum, but also in terms of what they mean going forward for the rest of the offseason and in terms of what they may indicate for the 2021 season as a whole, which we are all obviously very clued into and excited for, because as we've continued to talk about all offseason, this season for the Buffalo Bills is, for the first time in a very long time, a season with legitimate hopes and expectations. And those are, and they're high hopes and high expectations, not only for the team, but for the fan base. This isn't a season where it's, hopes and expectations that probably won't come true. And by week 4, we know we're going to be terrible and have no shot at anything. This is pretty legit. Oh, I like this comment coming through from Daniel. The Hall of Fame game is 1 week from tonight. I did not know that. So that's extremely exciting. And if true, big if true, and very excited. And as Craig mentioned, football players doing football things, exclamation point. That's exactly right. That's exactly what training camp is. Football players doing football things. As I've already pulled up a couple comments here, as we always like to do on Disguised Coverage, I love the live shows because of the engagement, because of the chat. So at any point, questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, maxims, theorems, ideologies, philosophies, beliefs, whatever, throw it up into the chat. I try to get to anything and everything that is put up into the chat, especially questions or anything that's like a really good comment. If I don't get to it in the moment, don't fret. Don't be alarmed. I usually circle back towards the end, time permitting, and try to get to anything and everything. And so, yeah, and keep it up there in the chat and the engagement. We always like that here at Cover One. What we also like here at Cover One, as I say it every week, rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage, to Cover One as a whole, the channel. Whether you're listening to this on any podcasting platform, whether you're watching or listening to this on YouTube, any of those things, I know it may sound corny or like we're shilling out for it, but rates and reviews and subscriptions help us tremendously. They go a long way for us, as do likes. I know it may seem simple, but likes for this video, likes for anything you're listening. Again, if you genuinely liked it, they go a long way towards helping us to trend and track and get in front of more eyeballs and out there for more people. And we really appreciate every single ounce of support that you guys give to us. So anything and anything you can do towards that regard is tremendously, tremendously appreciated. Last thing in the intro before we get started, you've heard me mention it several times here on Disguised Coverage. You've also seen it mentioned on the other shows on Cover One, the Cover One Buffalo podcast, the Huff podcast as well, even the Cover One Roundup with Rob Quinn and Kyle. We've got a Cover One fantasy football show going on now. That episode this week will be live on Friday night, as we will be throughout the entirety of the regular season. That Cover One Fantasy Football show will be live on Friday nights. And because of that show, we have reached partnership with Underdog Fantasy, a really tremendous app and fantasy football website. They do anything and everything from daily to best ball to player prop parlays, which is really cool and really interesting. We're going to get involved with a lot of that as the season progresses. But because of our partnership with them, we have a special offer for you guys. So if you download that Underdog Fantasy app, when you use the promo code COVER1, that's COVER1, all one word, no spaces, the number one, cover, and the number one, you get a free $25 when you use that promo code. So download the app, get yourself the free $25, compete against myself and Greg Thompson and Rich Haynes and any and every member of the Cover One team as we set up leagues and invite Slack channel members or members to the website or followers, anything and everything, or public leagues. We have a lot planned for the season. So do that. Join us. We're excited for it. Now that that's done, we're also excited for training camp because, as I mentioned in the intro, it is the signal to, at least for me, it's the signal to the NFL season about to really kick off, no pun intended again, and getting started. And even seeing some of the comments, I want to start to pull up some of these. Comment here from Brian: these first two practices have more positive reports coming out than I've heard in decades. I feel you on that, Brian. Aaron Quinn had a really good point when he came on Disguise coverage several weeks ago that usually during minicamp and the offseason, you hear a lot of positivity when it comes to any and every report really that's coming out of camp, not just for the Bills, but pretty much everybody. It's a lot of, positive vibes and good thoughts. And this player looked great. No one's really getting skewered during the offseason. But yeah, these first two practices, there's been a lot of positive reports. And I think that ties into how deep the Buffalo Bills are this year and how good of a team they are. I don't know what the probability is, but I feel like there's on any given day, there is a heavy probability that you're going to see someone do something great, or there's going to be something, memorable or some standout play. I mean, even if we go, I don't want to blow it up too much, but if you saw what Emmanuel Sanders said today, and I'm going to pull up this comment here from Humor Habit, who said, I love Sanders' interview today. Great passion and perspective. Emmanuel Sanders was gushing about a throw that Josh Allen had to Cole Beasley, where he just fitted into tight coverage, made a great throw. Cole made a great catch. And Emmanuel Sanders said Allen made that throw, and he's never seen a throw like that in his 12 years in the NFL. That is immaculate. To put that into perspective, Emmanuel Sanders has played with really, really, really good quarterbacks. Emmanuel Sanders has played in the Super Bowl. Emmanuel Sanders has played with, Peyton Manning is a Hall of Famer. I am going to assume that Ben Roethlisberger is going to be a Hall of Famer. He's played with two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And the fact that, not that this makes Josh Allen a Hall of Famer, but the fact that Josh Allen did something that impressed someone of Emmanuel Sanders' stature and status so much is so positive and so cool to see, and is a really good sign and indication of where Josh is in his game and where Emmanuel Sanders is in terms of where his head is at and how he's starting to fit into this team and his appreciation of it. And as Humor Habit mentioned, yeah, there was just a lot of passion and perspective coming from Emmanuel Sanders and good vibes, and he said a lot of great things. And I'm very excited for Emmanuel Sanders, aka Manny Sands, who is someone we're going to talk about on this episode tonight. And as we keep going through comments. Ooh, nice puns here. The beanstalk is grown, Boogie and Groot and Lil Dirty, aka Isaiah Mckenzie. Also a very good comment. Oh, good call, Daniel. I don't know how I did it. Apologies and forgive me. I completely skipped over Drew Brees, who is also going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. So he's played with 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Grant, I think maybe why I skipped out of it, Drew Brees never really had the strongest arm, so I feel like he doesn't have a chance to make that throw that Josh Allen did today, but very good point. Emmanuel Sanders has played with 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and the fact that Josh Allen did something that impressed Sanders so much to the point that he gushed about it in an interview is fantastic. And that's right, Mr. Diggs comment here. Manny Sands. I keep trying to work it in slowly so everybody can get up to speed, but Emmanuel Sanders is known as Manny Sands. That's what he's going to be, and that's what I call him, and it makes me giggle inside every time I say that name, so I'm going to continue to say it. So for the rest of this episode, anytime we reference Emmanuel Sanders, or at least I reference Emmanuel Sanders, I will be saying Manny Sands, so just be warned. What else? Also, very good comment here from Brian. What's crazy is that it's the second-tier players that are showing up in their preparedness and execution. Yeah, there's a ton of talent on this team. And I think that's kind of where, we're going to start in a different direction, but that is something that we're going to hit on in this episode. We've talked about it all offseason, the competitions and the battles that you're going to see in training camp. And it's different than previous years because we used to have rookies who were coming in that the Bills had to count on almost immediately. Or we had training camp battles that were battles just kind of by default because there really wasn't a ton of talent. It was just like, okay, a bunch of mid-level guys are going to compete and we'll see what happens. But there is second tier and first tier talent that is legitimate. Like the Bills' second tier talent could legitimately be starters on a lot of other teams. And we're seeing these guys go to battle on offense and defense and special teams. And it's tremendously exciting to see guys have to really gut it out to make this team because no one's spot is earned. And that goes for anyone from top to bottom. I mean, even looking at, again, something that we mentioned on the show, Gregory Rousseau and Carlos Basham, top 2 picks. How much are they even going to play this year? If they play, granted, the Bills rotate heavily up front, so it's not like one defensive lineman is going to be busting out like 60%, 70% of the snaps, but there's a very good chance that Rousseau and Basham, even if they crush it, still might only see like 35% of the snaps, which is such a far departure from previous Bills years where your first round pick and your second round pick were almost guaranteed to have to play a lot of snaps and a lot of minutes their rookie year because the Bills are kind of bereft of talent. Not this year, not anymore. First tier guys, we know what they bring, but even the second tier, third tier, fourth tier, however you want to classify it or quantify it, the Bills got talent for days, and it's a tremendously exciting and invigorating thing to experience as a Bills fan, and for me to experience that as a person covering the Bills because it makes it even better and it makes it even more enjoyable. Nothing sucks more than having to watch something that you love and have it be terrible, let alone cover it and analyze it and remember it even more. And and a good point here from Dawn, but with Boogie making the miraculous play and run back, yeah, that is amazing. We're going to touch on that as well as we start to get into things on this episode. Good point, Dawn. I'm going to start with some quotes and some things that Brandon Beane said in his presser yesterday. Brandon Beane was, I don't want to say very candid because I think Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott even more so, is very coach speaky and, very not cryptic, but doesn't really give you much to go off of. And he's great at dancing around questions. But Beane was pretty transparent and pretty candid with a lot of things yesterday. And reporters hit him with a ton of questions about COVID, a ton of questions about the locker room and the culture. Same thing for McDermott. McDermott danced around it a little more. Beane was a little more straightforward, but really nailed the COVID aspect of what is going on in the world right now. And I wanted to hit on a couple things just because I wanted to clear up any confusion for anybody on the COVID rules and things that are going on and everything like that. Oh, we have a super chat from Paul. I am excited for a silly reason. Our top 2 picks are 1 and 2 defensive ends in Madden 21 draft. Let's go, Buffalo. I feel you, Paul. I'm excited too. I was surprised when we went back-to-back edge. I knew we would come away with an edge in the first 3 rounds. I genuinely believed that and thought that. But once we hear Rousseau, I was like, okay, it's going to be a different position in round 2 and definitely in round 3. And the fact that we double dipped and then came away with the guys that we did and the reviews and the glowing praise that they've received from coaches and players right now is tremendously encouraging. So I'd be excited for both of them in Madden and in real life and anything and everything. And to go, good comment here from Daniel. Beane is about as open as a GM can be, but he can't tell it all. That is very true. You got to play things close to the vest. Beane touched on a lot of things for COVID and, some things that came out over the last couple of weeks were how COVID things are going to impact teams this season and the win-loss record. So just wanted to go through it. So a COVID outbreak amongst unvaccinated players, if it results in a game that cannot be rescheduled, that team is subject to forfeit and they are credited with a loss. So again, if the game has to be rescheduled, that's fine. But if the game can't be rescheduled, subject to a forfeit and credited with a loss. That team that has to forfeit that game is also responsible for any financial losses for the opposing team and subject to potential discipline from the commissioner. Also, any games that are canceled, neither team's players get paid for that week. I say again, any game that is canceled, neither team's players get paid for that week. Also, in relation to right now, anybody testing positive for anything. So if a vaccinated person tests positive and is asymptomatic, If they get 2 negative tests at least 24 hours apart, they can return. So anybody who is vaccinated and asymptomatic, if they test positive for COVID-19, once they get 2 negative tests that are 24 hours apart, they're cool to come back. Also, vaccinated players don't have to quarantine if they get into close contact with a confirmed or positive case of COVID-19. On the flip side of that, non-vaccinated players, if non-vaccinated players test positive, they have to be quarantined for 10 days and they can return once they are asymptomatic. So if you're vaccinated, you have a much quicker return time. Well, not much, but a quicker return time. Also, if you are non-vaccinated, you must quarantine for 5 days if you come in close contact with a positive case. So I just wanted to say all that to kind of break things down in terms of perspective and some of the things that Brandon Beane said. So Brandon Beane got drilled with a lot of questions and thoughts about vaccinated players, non-vaccinated players. How is it affecting these people? What are your thoughts on Cole Beasley sinking this? And, I feel you with a comment here from Barrett. I'm so sick of hearing about COVID BS. I feel you. I am not in it for COVID-19. I wanted to address it just because of some of the things that Brandon Beane said and what we can expect. I wanted to hear Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott talk about football things. So having Brandon Beane's presser was roughly like 28 minutes. And I feel like the first 10 or 11, maybe even 12 were just straight COVID related questions. And it's just not what you want to hear. But for the sake of how this team is going to be, I think it's important and to go through it. And Brandon Beane had a lot of poignant comments on the COVID-19 aspect in terms of, having to create an equal environment because of the vaccination differences between the non-vaxxed and the vaccinated in terms of regulations and protocol. And he also mentioned some things on how it might be tougher this offseason and this season because last year everybody wasn't vaccinated. So you had the same set of protocols and guidelines that applied to everyone. Now we've got different sets of rules that apply to different players and different times. And even the quarantine things that I just went over for non-vax versus vaccinated, it's different. So a lot more, legwork and, mental bandwidth that you have to set aside in order to deal with those things. And Brandon Beane also mentioned that everyone's got to be smart, which is a given, but especially because there's a different set of rules and protocols and everything that has to be done. And Brandon Beane also said some other things. So just roughly over 80% of the players have gotten at least one shot, and all of the coaches are completely vaccinated. So that's interesting to note as well. And then we got into the actual football aspects of things. So the reporters stopped asking about COVID, and we got into the nitty gritty and the football aspects of the presser for Brandon Beane. And I thought this was very interesting. So Brandon Beane mentioned having to reestablish who the Bills are this year, and that with the success they had last year and what they did last year, teams have studied that. The tape is out there. And I think this is something that I don't think we've talked a lot about or maybe enough about it. This offseason going into the season, the Bills, as we know, had a tremendous offseason last year. Had a tremendous season last year in 2020. And then coming into the offseason, you've got that entire 2020 footage of tape out there. The teams that did well against the Buffalo Bills, that tape is out there. So teams that are going to be playing the Bills this year, you have an entire season's worth of tape to dive into and scour in terms of scheming against the Buffalo Bills for 2020, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work. There's a lot on the table. And I like Beane's mindset. It doesn't come as a shock. It's the Bills' mindset as a whole, but having to reestablish who they are and knowing that he mentioned a couple of things too. Nothing that we did in 2020 will affect what we do this year. He mentioned a lot of phrases like having to start from the bottom, restarting over everything. Everybody's 0-0. The success they had last year means nothing for 2021. And it's a really good thing to hear. And it's a really good thing to feel on day one to kind of set the tone. This is a very, 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 very important season. I also see the chat blowing up, so I will get to that. This is a very important season for the Bills, but it's also a season where no one's going to sneak up on anyone. Someone asked Brandon Beane his thoughts on, being the hunted or kind of having a target on his back a little more. And Beane dodged it and said, unless you're winning the Super Bowl, you haven't earned anything. So yeah, we have a target, but we're still also hunting ourselves. Some things like that. But he did mention that in the division they are the hunted, and I think the Bills are one of the hunted teams in the NFL as a whole. For as good as the Bills were last year, and this doesn't take anything away from the Bills in 2020, and it doesn't diminish anything that they did, but the Bills, I think, very much came out of nowhere last year. I think even the most optimistic of fans weren't predicting the year that Josh Allen was going to have, let alone the national media and the pundits and a lot of teams. No one thought Josh Allen was going to do what he did. Nobody thought Stephon Diggs was going to do what he did. I mean, how many people thought that Stephon Diggs was going to come to Buffalo and hate it? Adding COVID in the mix and everything like that, it was a wonky season, weird season. You could make the case that the Bills kind of came out of nowhere. There is no chance for that this year. You can't sneak up on anybody. It's hard to do that in the NFL once there's tape out there, let alone when you have a successful year like the Bills did. So hearing Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott echoed the same thing with the humble and hungry motto and mentality for the Bills this year in 2021. It's good to see that we know that's still a focus, and they're going to keep everybody as humble and as hungry, not to use that phrase as corny and cliche as it is, but to keep everybody as hungry and as humble as possible in order to achieve things in 2021. Beane really hit on the good year that they had in 2020, but how they didn't accomplish everything that they wanted to do. They didn't meet some of the standards that they want to set for this team and this organization. So it's nice to see from like a morale and a culture standpoint that they're keeping, putting the screws to everybody to keep, making sure everybody's working hard and grinding and doing what they need to and having that sense of accountability regardless of the success they had last year. But also from a technical standpoint, this is something to discuss and see what it's going to look like for the Bills in 2021. Again, maybe the Bills kind of came out of nowhere last year. Not a lot of people thought Josh Allen was going to kill it like he killed it, but that element of surprise is completely gone. Every week that the Bills play, whoever the Bills play, whenever the Bills play, that team knows that they have to bring their best. And if you're an AFC East team like the Dolphins and the Patriots and even the Jets, you know that the Bills swept you last year and won the division. So division games are going to be even harder, let alone every other game that happens. People are knowing the positive vibes that the Bills are getting out in the national spotlight, the primetime games they get, the love, so on and so forth. Every team is going to bring their best. And when you combine that with a full offseason of tape and scouting on a team that is relatively the same, we talked about the continuity this offseason from the coaching staff and from the roster standpoint. So there's lack of a roster element of surprise as well. You could have gone into last season not knowing, well, how does Stephon Diggs fit in? How does Zach Moss fit in? Like, what does Gabriel Davis do? What does Isaiah Hodgins do potentially? All these things that doesn't really exist this season. So the Bills are going to have to reestablish who they are and what they do. They're going to have to refine it. They're going to have to pinpoint it because there is a plethora of tape on this team from last year, combined with lacking the element of surprise. People are going to be ready for the Bills this year, and they're definitely going to bring it. Beane also had a couple other things that I thought was very interesting. So we talked about the defensive line this offseason and how he and Sean McDermott both believe in building from the trenches, so offensive line and defensive line. And he mentioned that defensive line versatility is what he was looking towards the most in reference to selecting players. So how versatile Gregory Rousseau and Carlos Basham are was a big thing. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone, but it's very interesting, again, to note the versatility aspect of Rousseau and Basham when it comes to the training camp battles that we're going to have on the defensive line. The Bills have a lot of players amongst the defensive line at both edge and defensive tackle. And trying to plot out who's going to make this team, it's a really tough thing. But having the versatility piece, you have guys who can play edge or who may be able to kick inside, guys who can wear multiple hats. It creates the multiple roster spots in one player type of thing. And you can save roster spots when you have one guy who can wear multiple hats and wear those multiple hats well. It does a lot for your team, opens up the roster, gives you more potential from a roster perspective, but also from an on-field and execution standpoint. If you've got guys who can, again, wear multiple hats and do different things, or somebody like a Gregory Rousseau who can kick inside, or even potentially AJ Epinesa, or all the NASCAR packages if you want to just roll 4 edge rushers out on third down, all these types of things. And it's a really nice thing that the Bills are going to have this year, especially for a team like the Bills who, as we've talked about on the show, want to rotate their front four. They want to not limit snap counts, but they want to keep everybody fresh. They want to play players situationally, and they want to get a good rotation going so that way they can play the run and rush with four, ideally, effectively and efficiently a majority of the time. So good to see that comment from Bean. And then he talked about a couple other things that I thought was interesting. So just a quick note on Cody Ford. He mentioned that Cody Ford had as great of an offseason as someone can have considering he was rehabbing and coming off of injuries and surgeries. He also mentioned that Cody Ford would get work at both guard spots. He spoke about Cody Ford having to bounce around different positions in his first couple of years and how that's hard for anyone. And then he did mention that Cody Ford would get work at both left and right guard. On the show, I am a massive proponent that Cody Ford is a better left guard than he is right guard. We'll see what happens, but it's interesting to note that Cody Ford will get work at both guard spots. As far as running back, another training camp battle and competition that I think a lot of us have our eyes on. Brandon Beane mentioned that Brian Daboll would do a lot of the things that you saw last year and, quote, go with the hot hand at running back. So I think it was already a tough position grouping to predict. If you're trying to predict who's going to get the most carries, who's going to get the most touches, who's the quote-unquote starter or A-back, I don't think it's going to be as easy as just like, oh, yeah, this guy's the starter. I think it's going to be a lot of what we saw last year from game to game. Maybe this game Singletary's the guy. Maybe next game it's Zach Moss. Maybe it's Matt Breida both games. Maybe it's neither of them or none of them or all three. Maybe it's split. Maybe it's more runs for you, more passes for you. It's going to be based on who's playing well at the time, what the game dictates, what the offense dictates, and Brian Daboll's going to ride that hot hand. So more ambiguity with that as well. A couple things from Sean McDermott. Again, he was asked a lot about COVID. He played it really smart, gave a ton of coach speak, didn't really answer any questions directly, dodged and danced around a lot of things, just really highlighted and nailed that you got to respect people's opinions and get as much understanding as you can. And that, much like what Brandon Beane said, having to balance everything and having to create an equal environment because of the vaccinated and unvaccinated, Sean McDermott said it definitely is a quote-unquote heavier lift with having both vaccinated and non-vaccinated players because of the protocols and rules and standards and the bandwidth that you have to use to make sure everything is followed. And then one other point, so he plugged the humble and hungry, that being their motto and their mantra for this year, but he also mentioned sustainability, which again goes hand in hand with the Brandon Beane philosophy and thought that he gave in his presser that the Bills, haven't done anything in 2021, and what they achieved in 2020 means nothing for 2021. And the sustainability, building a team and an organization that can year in and year out be successful and win and challenge for a championship, is that sustainability piece. So, just to kind of highlight and hit on everything that Beane and McDermott said, I think they batted almost close to 1,000. I don't believe anyone's ever perfect, but they got as close to it as you could. McDermott is amazing at the coach speak aspect and not really giving you too much and too much insight. And as far as Brandon Beane, I think he gave as much insight as he could. As the comment earlier mentioned, he was as straightforward as he could be, even though not a lot of GMs are, and he really can't be either. You don't want to give it all away, but we got some interesting tidbits. And I think it's good to see the tone that they're setting. Again, I'm going to talk about it a lot. We've years and years of ineptitude, whether it was general managers or coaches, from Marone to Rex Ryan and anyone and everyone in between, and Dick Duran, and all those years, just not having the right people steering the ship and not having the right people at the helm. And it's really great to see press conferences coming from your head coach and your GM and having them just say the right things and drill on the right things and having that sense of accountability. And again, granted, a lot of it is buzzwords, but hearing the humble and hungry and the sustainability, and last year means nothing, and we're working to get on the, to achieve in 2021 what we did in 2020, but be even better, and so on and so forth, and build. They ticked a lot of the boxes. So really great stuff from Beane and McDermott. And you get the sense of why this Bills team is where they are in terms of their mentality and their culture, because of the guys steering the ship, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. They're fantastic. And this team gets a lot from them, especially in terms of leadership. A lot of comments blowing up. I'm going to go through as much as I can, because it is a lot. As Griff mentioned, Cole's refusal to just shush brought this on us. But hey, Cole has his thoughts and his viewpoints, and I think he's still been decent. He was at least respectful on the podium when he read his speech, and he's got the support of his guys, and he keeps balling out in practice. So pray for the best, hope for the best, and we'll see what happens. Comment here from T. Dobbs. I hope Isaiah Hodgins balls out. I think he might be a hidden talent, big guy with good hands. I'm a big fan of Isaiah Hodgins. Really great at the catch point, long, good size, tremendous route runner, great footwork, especially for a college player. I've said it a million times as well. I thought he would have a better 2020 than Gabriel Davis. I was more excited for the Isaiah Hodgins pick last year than I was Gabriel Davis. Davis had a obviously much better year, but I'm excited to see what Hodgins can do and where he fits in that wide receiver room, because the Bills have a lot of talent in wide receiver and not a lot of roster space for it. Pardon me as I take a drink there. I've been doing a lot of talking in this first 30 minutes. I don't know why that comes as a surprise, considering I'm a solo host on the show. Comment here from Nick. Haven't heard anything about Hodgins. Really, Mckenzie had a huge day, though. Yep, that is true. I haven't heard a lot about Isaiah Hodgins, but Isaiah Mckenzie, the other Isaiah on the team, he had a very good day today, which we are going to get into. Comment here from Griff in regards to the tape aspect. Teams do have a lot of tape on Josh, but yeah, he keeps getting better. We're going to see the jump this year for Josh Allen. I'm really excited. I don't think it's fair to think that he'll have a jump this year similar to the jump that he had last year. I also would say, caution everybody against him having a better year and tying that or attributing that to stats. I think Josh Allen could be a better quarterback in 2021 and have less touchdowns and less yards, but he could still be a better quarterback. So don't tie it all to stats. But yeah, teams have tape, but Allen keeps getting better, and that's part of the game. Can you continue to evolve and adapt as teams attempt to evolve and adapt to stop you? Who does it better and who progresses? Keep going through with the comments. Ooh, comment here from Tony. We need to keep 7 receivers. Diggs, Bees, Manny. I love that you called him Manny. Gabe, Mckenzie, Kumaro, and Stevenson. Hodgins will make it to the practice squad. Wow, keeping 7 receivers and having Jake Kumaro in that mix. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Any other comments coming through? Ooh, a lot of disagreement back and forth on Kumaro. A lot of positive vibes from Mckenzie. Seeing it. Oh, comment here from Nick. I think McDermott ends up trading Jake Kumaro. Ooh, could be. Oh, all right. Comment here from Craig. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Bean has been itching for a trade all offseason. He wants Chandler Jones, and he will get his man. I think it's going to cost a pretty penny to get Chandler Jones, not even just in terms of money, but also in terms of players and or draft capital. Greg Thompson of Cover One, co-host of the Cover One Buffalo podcast and co-host with me and Rich Haynes on the Cover One Fantasy Football Show, outlined a pretty realistic option in terms of what to do in order to obtain Chandler Jones that included who was going to be traded. I believe it was Mario Addison, a second-round pick, potentially something else, and that also included a restructure / extension for Chandler Jones. So there are a lot of moving parts. Not a crazy amount, but there are a lot of moving parts, but it could be done. That's a bold prediction that you think Bean could get Chandler Jones. It would really elevate this defensive line. Chandler Jones, I think he's a forgotten guy when it comes to edge rushers in the NFL. He's one of the best in getting to the quarterback, and he's also better at playing the run that people realize. Eric Turner, again from Cover One, posted a really nice video earlier this week of Chandler Jones just being strong at the point of attack and taking out a double team. I believe it was against the 49ers, and just pushing a run to the outside and standing strong. He's a monster. It would be amazing if we got Chandler Jones. He immediately adds an elite player on that defensive line. I think we potentially could have some elite guys on the D line already in the mix. We know we have Tre'Davious White, who is elite on the back end, and we know Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are, I would say, very close to, if not elite themselves. If we could add another elite player on a different level of the ball, either at defensive line or linebacker, I think Milano is close in that regard as well. Man, that could take this defense to another level. What else do we got? Ooh, Gareth has some faith in Devin Singletary. Says that Singletary will be the RB1. Oh, interesting here. Anything else? No. Oh, I feel like I answer this every week. It's not an aluminum. No, it's just a silver Christmas tree. But yeah, basically what it is I love Christmas, and I wanted to keep up a Christmas tree all year round in the living room. And the wife and I went back and forth on it, and I lost. Although we do pretty much keep our Christmas tree up from November till about like mid-February-ish. We've also pushed it to March a couple times, so I have one every once in a while. But I lost that battle, and the big Christmas tree in the living room came down. But my wife surprised me with this beautiful. I'm always terrible at this. There we go. No. There we go. With this beautiful little tree in the back to keep into the office. And what I do is I change the garland depending on whatever holiday is going on. So we came off of 4th of July and Labor Day, America. So red, white, and blue. Also Buffalo Bills, red, white, and blue. Come fall and come Halloween and Thanksgiving, we'll add some oranges and some yellows and reds and colors to it. Maybe some pumpkin stuff, maybe some turkey stuff. Christmas is Christmas. February, red stuff, hearts. March, St. Patrick's Day, green stuff. Easter, yellows and blues and greens and pastels. So I got a whole plan for it. But yeah, that's the story with the tree. Yep. See, Griff gets it. The standard Christmas tree question. I get it every episode, usually from at least one person, but a lot of times multiple. But yeah, that's why the Christmas tree is there. So we talked about Bean. We talked about McDermott a little bit. Now we're going to start to talk about the players. And someone who we already spoke about on this show, Manny Sands. He was very effusive in his praise for Josh Allen today after day 2 of Buffalo Bills training camp. And the trust is starting to build between Josh Allen and Manny Sands. I want to highlight an article that Rob Quinn of Cover One did he's one of the co-hosts of the Cover One Roundup on Monday nights. And he's also a tremendous and excellent writer, and he does pieces regularly for cover1.net. And he did this piece on Emmanuel Sanders, aka Manny Sands. And that is where I pulled a lot of these awesome stats and pieces of data to put some Manny Sands aspect into perspective. So, Manny Sands, in his career, 64% of his career snaps have come on the outside, 36% have come in the slot. Should be no surprise. We've talked about the versatility that Manny Sands has. And as Tony mentioned, awesome presser by Manny Sands. Hell yeah, awesome presser by Manny Sands. So Manny Sands, 64% of his career snaps have come on the outside, 36% in the slot. Very versatile. Can line up outside, can line up inside, gives you a lot of flexibility in your regular sets, gives you a lot of flexibility in your sub packages, knows how to leverage coverage in multiple ways. Fantastic. In 2020, and again, this data is coming from Rob Quinn's article, which you should still go and check out because it's filled with so much more data and context and perspective. It's fantastic. Rob is one of the best in the business, and I'm not just saying that. In 2020 versus zone coverage, Manny Sands averaged 10.2 yards per target. That is 8th out of the 45 qualifying wide receivers in the NFL. Again, against zone coverage, he had a 74% catch rate. That is 9th out of the 45 qualifying wide receivers. He had a 0.53 EPA, which was 3rd amongst the qualifying wide receivers. And he had a 68% positive play percentage, which was 4th amongst qualifying receivers. A tremendous year for Manny Sands. Also, I just wanted to mention it too, if you don't know what EPA is, it's expected points added, and it's basically, it measures a play's impact on the score of the game. So expected points added is the difference between expected points at the start of a play and the expected points at the end of a play. So he was 3rd against zone coverage, which is tremendous. Versus man coverage, not to get into too many more stats, but he was 5th in catch rate and 4th in positive play percentage. Manny Sands is fantastic. Manny Sands adds a lot to this offense. He does not have the deep vertical speed that John Brown does, but not many people do. John Brown, as we have stated multiple times throughout this offseason, is one of the but he's one of the fastest players in the NFL. Not even just wide receivers. He's very, very, very fast. That's why his nickname is what his nickname is. He's very fast. He runs very fast. Manny Sands is still good enough to get vertical. He's not going to be as good getting vertical as John Brown, but he is a much better route runner. He understands coverage much better. He's better at option routes. He's better at understanding the zones and what's in front of him. He's a veteran. He's seen a lot. He's got better hands. He's reliable. It's tough how you want to defend. It's tough how you want to define whether or not it's an upgrade or who's the better wide receiver. And I like John Brown a lot. I think he served very admirably as wide receiver 1 for this team before Stephon Diggs was added. And I also think he had a lot of injuries last year. And if not, this offense could have been even better in 2020 than it was if John Brown was healthy. But alas, he was not. I'm very excited to have Manny Sands in this offense. And I gave you some of those stats, but I'm already hearing that he and Josh are developing a rhythm, and Josh is looking towards him, and Manny Sands is making plays and coming down with tough catches. And to hear, as we saw in the comments from you guys earlier, how positive and he's been in his presser and the perspective that he's added in his thought process. This guy is a winner. This guy is a legitimate veteran. He's got a solid pedigree, and he chose this team because he wants to win a Super Bowl, and he had high expectations for this team, and he's come in, and Josh Allen has already impressed the hell out of him, and we're only on day 2 of training camp. I'm very excited to see, as I've mentioned all offseason, what their rapport starts to look like, what this offense looks like with Manny Sands. I think with Stephon Diggs, Manny Sands, and Cole Beasley, you can't cover them with man coverage. We know how great Stephon Diggs is against man coverage. We know how great Cole Beasley is against man coverage. Manny Sands is more than serviceable against man coverage. And then when it comes to zone, I just read you off a whole bunch of how great Manny Sands is against zone. We already know how good Cole Beasley is across the middle and in those option routes, eating linebackers and slot corners and on the outs and the digs and the jerk routes. And we know Stephon Diggs can do anything and everything at any point. Those 3 wide receiver sets, it's going to be tough to defend. And it's good to see that we're already starting to see a rhythm and routine and rapport develop between Manny and Josh, and I'm very excited. Someone else who has done well, Siran Neal, got a lot of positive praise from Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. They talked about how great of an athlete he is and that he's one of the best athletes they've ever seen, if not the best they've ever seen. I'm very excited to hear the positive stuff about Siran Neal. So he had a great day today. He had a pass breakup and a near interception. I think Siran Neal makes this team already just because of his special teams ability. He's going to make this team. But if Siran Neal can start to show even more value on the defensive side of the ball and be able to contribute on the defensive side in addition to special teams, again, we talked about the roster aspect and guys being able to wear multiple hats. If we can have someone of Siran Neal's caliber on special teams, but he can also contribute on the defense, it would be tremendous. And for a defense that has, granted, it's only corner 2, but we know what Tre'Davious White is. We know what Micah Hyde is and Jordan Poyer, and we know Taron Johnson is going to start in the slot. But there's still some questions for the rest of the secondary for the foreseeable future. As I've stated multiple times on Twitter and on this show, for corner, all we have committed to after this year is Rashad Wildgoose, Tre'Davious White, and Dane Jackson. And then if you want to throw in like Nick McLeod and Elijah Griffin, we don't have any corners on the roster after this year other than those guys. And McLeod and Griffin could easily be gone in a moment's notice. Honestly, so could Rashad Wildgoose. You never know. What is this secondary and what's the corner position going to look like as we go forward? Throw in the aspect of different combinations and matching up with different teams who want to go, with multiple tight end sets, or teams like the Chiefs or the Raiders or even the Patriots who have good tight ends who can do some things. Even, even the Dolphins. I think Mike Gesicki is a pretty decent enough tight end, or the Washington football team with Logan Thomas. If Siran Neal can be another chess piece, maybe a bigger nickel guy, maybe a monster man, maybe a jack of all trades type guy, in addition to the special teams ace that he is, that will be really exciting. It's really nice to hear the positive talk about him for the defensive aspect of his game, not special teams related. So I think that's a standout thing for sure. I'm going to start going back to some of the comments. Coming in the comments. Yep. Oh, back to some running back talk. Don't be surprised if Antonio Williams gets reps if Devin and Zach don't contribute on a consistent basis. Ooh, okay. Very interesting. More comments here. What else? Anything else? Oh, here we go. Comment here from Brian. A lot of consistent comments from Diggs, Manny, and Beasley that Josh is pure footballer, not limited to the system. He creates in a way that the receivers relate to. That's a very good point. I believe it was Manny Sands who said some things about, guys who are just good at football versus guys who have a passion for it. I believe he said that, and I believe it was in reference to Josh Allen. We've heard about it a lot. We've heard the Josh Allen is a dog comments. We saw that clip of and seen the game when Josh Allen, fumbled against Dallas and got the ball and literally willed himself to a first down. Josh Allen plays with a lot of heart. He plays with a lot of passion, and the team loves him and respects him and fights for him and lets him lead them. And I do not think that can be underestimated. And great comment from Brian pointing out that type of talk is consistent in the guys like Diggs and Manny and Beasley, even seeing coming from Manny, having it be early on. So yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure a great thing. Ooh, comment here from Tony. That's why we need Stevenson to make the 53. Deep speed, opposite of Diggs with Beasley and Manny in the slot. That's so scary with a lot of O's. If you're just listening and not watching on YouTube, there's about 70 million O's in that. So I don't know if Stevenson's going to make the 53. We're going to talk about it in a minute. Actually, we're going to talk about it next, but that would be very interesting. Ooh, comment here from Griff. If this stat is accurate, that would be pretty sweet. 72% win rate against man coverage from Manny. That would be sweet. And yeah, that 11 personnel would be pretty dangerous. Yeah, Griff, as you mentioned, that 11 personnel. So again, 11 personnel, for those of you who don't know, that means one tight end and one running back. Yeah, and then obviously with 11, one tight end, one running back, 3 wide receivers, that 11 personnel, which the Bills ran a majority of their sets and snaps out of last year, 3 wide receiver sets, and then some 4 and 5 wide receiver sets as well. Weapons for days. Very excited. Manny Sands adds a lot to this team. There was a comment here about Dean Marlowe. There we go. With Dean Marlowe gone, good comment here from Tony, Neal could emerge. Yeah, that safety aspect. So Ron Neal, when he was drafted, he was a quote-unquote safety, and then moved more towards like slot corner and special teams, gunner, ace, do-it-all man kind of guy. Safety depth this year, to your point with Marlowe gone, is a big question. We've got Hyde and we've got Poyer. After that, you don't really know what you have. You've got Jaquan Johnson, who I love. I'm a Miami Hurricanes guy. Jaquan Johnson was a captain at Miami. I loved his play there. I was super pumped when the Bills drafted him, but I don't know how well his game translates to the NFL on defense. He's been quality for sure on special teams, but I don't know if he can handle regular starting safety snaps. Then also you're looking at Damar Hamlin, rookie coming out of Pitt. Can he handle starting safety snaps at some point? I have a lot of hope for Damar Hamlin. I liked his game at Pitt. I really liked the value late of him being on the board and the Bills pulling the trigger on him. But even so, even if you've got high hopes, even if you have high hopes for both Jaquan Johnson and Damar Hamlin, as Greg Thompson famously says, hope is not a plan. So there are a lot of questions at safety behind Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. And a very scary exercise, knock on wood, to play at home is imagine that Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer go down. Who steps in for them at safety? It's a scary thought. It's a scary game. I don't like to play that game. But if you play it, it's terrifying. Think about it. But yes, to your point, Tony, with Marlowe gone, Neal could emerge. Maybe he flexes back to safety a little bit. Bills could rearrange some things. They wouldn't be able to disguise coverage as well. No pun intended. But yeah, he could emerge. What else do we got? Ooh, comment here from Nick. Are you going to the stadium practice Saturday? If not, are you going to have a show after? We know reporters can't say a lot. I am going to the stadium practice on Saturday, and I am very excited. Don't know about having a show after, but and I also don't know, to your point, I don't know what can be recorded and what can be shown, but I am going to the stadium practice, and I'm very excited, and I'm very pumped and excited and pumped. Also, I'm excited and pumped. Yes, I am going. I'm very excited. Good comment there from Tommy. Even the defense talks about Allen with respect. Yeah, it's across the board for the entire team. He gets respect from everyone other than Jalen Ramsey, who still probably thinks he's trash, but who cares what Jalen Ramsey thinks? Ooh, Ooh, I like hot takes. Comment here from William. Hot take. I think either one of Jerry Hughes or Mario Addison gets cut. Too many young, good defensive ends to keep. Can't justify 6 defensive ends on this roster. I think we do keep 6. I think Daryl Johnson is odd man out, even though he's very good at special teams. But I see your point there. I don't think Jerry gets cut. I think at the end of the day, Jerry is still the best, until proven otherwise, is the best edge rusher on this team. And he had a very good 2020, and I will defend to the death of me how good of a 2020 he had and how people need to realize he had a good 2020. Mario Addison took that contract restructure this offseason that I think was kind of like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, do this thing. You're not going anywhere. We're going to keep you, kind of a handshake under the table type thing. In addition to that, he's shown up in great shape. He looks a lot leaner. He looks closer to the guy who had double-digit sacks 4 straight seasons in Carolina, or averaged out to double-digit sacks 4 straight seasons in Carolina. Someone would really have to emerge as a young guy. I think for Addison to go, I don't think Jerry's going at all. But if Addison were to go, that means that somebody has to emerge like crazy. It means Epinesa has to look like the guy, or Rousseau and Basham, who are both receiving really phenomenal reports so far this offseason, both in minicamp and training camp. One of them would have to emerge to the point that Addison becomes expendable. And I don't know how much he is at this point. Oh, thank you, Griff. I appreciate you. This is where if I had a producer, I would be able to like point to the producer and have him like fact check stuff and then like say stuff in my ear so I could like spit it out. But I don't have that. I'm a one-man show. So thank you to Griff for this. Just verified with this Cover One article. Awesome reference there, Griff. 72% catch rate versus man for Manny Sands. Yeah, and so that was 5th amongst qualifying receivers, which is fantastic. And as some of the comments are coming through, yeah, it doesn't really make sense for the cap to cut either. I think if we cut Addison, last time I looked at the numbers, I believe we lose, I think it's like $6 million in dead cap, but it does this year and then $2 million next year, but it would come out to like a $2 million. We would like have $2 million more in cap space, even when you factor in the dead cap. But yeah, not a ton of benefit, not a ton of reason to do that. You would only do that if somebody just comes and shows out to the point where you're like, wow, this makes better sense for our roster. Griff coming out and saying we keep 6 defensive ends this year. Yeah, Griff, I'm also kind of thinking the same thing. I do think we keep 6 defensive ends as well. And yeah, if Addison was gone, he would be gone by now. And I appreciate you, Griff. Yeah, here's my resume, sir. Laugh out loud. And oh, wait, I work for half your podcast. Well, we'll see what happens. But I appreciate you. That's very good. That's very good. Also, a couple of things I wanted to mention in relation to Siran Neal. So being a core special teamer, but we've talked about on the show the aspect of having core special teamers and special teams specialists versus having guys that can do special teams work, but also play on either offense or defense. And that was one of the things that Brandon Beane said in his presser yesterday. And he mentioned how important it was for non-frontline starters. That's a direct quote, non-frontline starters. He mentioned how important it is for non-frontline starters to be involved in special teams 4 or 5 phases. He mentioned guys that are not frontline starters need to be in the hip pocket of special teams coaches, to the point that special teams coaches need to come to Beane and McDermott and be like, oh, I got to have this guy. This guy has to make the roster because I need him on special teams. Siran Neal is already in that boat for special teams, but if he could also be in that boat and provide useful snaps on defense, that would be a very, 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 very tremendous thing. Oh, I appreciate you, Daniel. Hit that like button, Bills fans, with a whole bunch of thumbs up. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. Again, as I mentioned, all the likes, it may sound corny or may seem like it doesn't matter, but those likes go a long way in terms of getting us in front of more eyeballs and helping us track and trend. So I really appreciate that. Ooh, Tony going with the defensive ends here. We keep Addison, Hughes, F.A. Obata, A.J. Basham, and then Rousseau. We keep 6 defensive ends. F.A. can flex the tackle. I also think those are the defensive ends that we keep, I believe, as long as I didn't misread that correctly. Yeah. Now moving on to somebody who's been spoken about multiple times in the comments section of this podcast. Isaiah Mckenzie, the wide receiver battle is one to keep an eye on. We've talked about it all offseason. We talked about it a little earlier with some of the comments for Isaiah Hodgins. And Isaiah Mckenzie has looked very good so far in camp, especially today. He, played very well today. He's displaying solid route running. A lot of the players and reporters were talking about how great he looked coming in and out of breaks and how he's just upbeat and trash talks in a really fun, engaging way, and just literally nothing but positive and effusive praise for Isaiah Mckenzie from reporters, coaches, players, all that kind of stuff. Marquez Stevenson also made a big play today and looked good in one-on-one drills from what was reported as well. But it's a really interesting spot. Isaiah Mckenzie, I don't think he's as much of a lock to make the team as people think he is. But if he just keeps doing what he's done so far, also, I recognize the touchdowns that he had last year, but I don't think that's sustainable. He had a lot of touchdowns relative to the amount of usage and snaps that he had. I think it's pretty comparable to the MVP season that Lamar Jackson had. Nothing against Lamar. He had an MVP year, but Lamar threw a ridiculous amount of touchdowns relative to the attempts and throws that he had. It was a crazy high touchdown percentage. We saw last year he regressed more towards the mean. I think to expect that type of touchdown production from Isaiah Mckenzie is not realistic. That being said, he does have a niche role on this team. He is a specialized weapon. His quickness and his gadgetry aspect are very intriguing. The special teams aspect is what it's going to come down to. He's had the drop season in the past. He had them in college. He had them in the NFL, both with Denver and with the Bills for a little bit. But we saw a glimpse of what he can do when he took that punt to the house against Miami in week 17 last year. So if he can nail that down, I think it's hard to beat out Isaiah Mckenzie for that punt return spot. You could also potentially see him at kick returner, or what I'm still thinking is going to be the combo, as long as Mckenzie doesn't play himself out of it. You see Isaiah Mckenzie at punt returner and then Matt Breida potentially at kick returner. But ideally, if you could have one guy nail down both kick return duty spots, both in kick return and punt return, that would be tremendous. I love saving roster spots and having a guy who can wear multiple hats. So if Mckenzie can do both punt return and kick return and then also function in the offense as he has, that would be tremendous. I think his real competition is Marquez Stevenson. I'm thinking 6 wide receivers. I'm still thinking the top 4 are locked. Diggs, Beasley, Manny Sands, Gabriel Davis. From that point, I think it's between Mckenzie, Marquez Stevenson, Isaiah Hodgins, maybe an outside shot at Jake Kumaro, but I think 6 wide receivers make it. And not that Mckenzie and Stevenson both can't make it, but realistically speaking, I see one of them making it. So it'll be interesting to see what Isaiah Mckenzie continues to do in camp, because he's getting rave reviews so far and has been absolutely killing it. Other guys who have been killing it was mentioned earlier by Dawn in the comments. Carlos Basham had what's being called the play of camp so far. Granted, it's only 2 days, so small sample size. But Boogie Basham had a tip ball and pick 6 today that everybody loved and demonstrated his athleticism and tenacity. And it's nice to see him doing that in tandem with the play that Gregory Rousseau has been displaying really since minicamp, but even more so in camp now. Rousseau has been getting consistent pressure. He's been getting sacks. He's been making plays. He's really showing that quickness and that length and that size, and is really, as of this moment, as advertised. You saw the raw potential and the stats, and there was context that had to be added to it, but so far Rousseau is looking like the real deal, and Basham is playing a very well complement to him. So the rookies so far are showing up very, very, very strong in both Carlos Basham and Gregory Rousseau, which, again, when we talked about that versatility piece that Brandon Beane mentioned, that's huge for this defensive line. If Gregory Rousseau can kick inside on third downs, or even potentially Carlos Basham could, depending on what you want to go with, that changes the roster construction in terms of edge rushers and defensive tackles that you keep, what you do up front, how the rotation fits. But at the end of the day, these guys are the future of the defensive line from the edge rusher position. I think when you put them in tandem or conjunction with AJ Epinesa, that's the future of this edge grouping. We don't know what's going to happen with Jerry Hughes next year or Mario Addison next year. And if you're looking at the defensive end spot, you can never have too many pass rushers. And for a team like the Bills, who Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott at this point are both on record multiple times saying they believe the defense is built from the defensive line out. So we know defensive line is a top priority. You need to have youth and skill at defensive end. And what the plan is for AJ Epinesa, Gregory Rousseau, and Carlos Basham to be the future of the defensive end position on that defensive line. So the more positive things we hear about those three guys, we also heard some positive things about AJ Epinesa as well. The more positive things we hear about those three, the better for the future of this team. Again, to tie in something Sean McDermott said, we want to talk about sustainability. It's awesome that the Bills are very good right now, but we want the Bills to be very good for years to come and years to come and more years to come. And you do that by continuing to replenish the pipeline, replenish your talent, getting production and value out of young guys, turning them into a core, and continuing to build that machine. And we know how important the defensive line is. Rousseau, Basham, and Epinesa are the foreseeable future of that defensive line from the edge standpoint. So to hear the positive plays coming out of Rousseau and Basham and Epinesa to a degree, but even more so for Rousseau and Basham is very, very, very encouraging. And also interesting to see for this defensive end grouping. Jerry Hughes is out with a calf strain right now at this time. So more snaps for Basham, more snaps for Rousseau, more work against frontline guys, tier 1 guys, tier 2 guys, getting better acclimated to the NFL. So really good things. We should continue to see an upward trajectory and trend for Basham and Rousseau, as we already have. And last aspect before I dive into the comments, I'm seeing a lot of comments coming through, so I'm going to dive into those. Last thing before that, if you listen to this show, which I hope you do, you know that corner 2 has been on my mind all offseason. It was on my mind leading up to the draft. It was on my mind at the draft. It's been on my mind after the draft. It will continue to be on my mind. As I take a drink of water there. So Levi Wallace, Mr. Steady Eddie, not flashy, not sexy, just always in the right spot in the right time, doesn't get rattled, even keeled in his play, in his mentality, great with preparation, smart dude, continues to be all of those things, just a model of consistency and production. Dane Jackson is his competition. I think we most likely see a platoon at corner 2 this year, but Dane Jackson has had some really standout days and some standout plays, both in 2020 and throughout this offseason, but not so much today. He had a rough day too. He got beat multiple times, not just by like the tier 1 guys, but guys who are further down the depth chart for the wide receiver grouping. He did not put a good performance together. He was not pleased. And again, when you put it in perspective with Levi Wallace, who continues to just reward the faith in him from the coaching staff. The coaching staff loves him. Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have both multiple times talked about his story, his journey, what he does, what he's come from, how he was a no-star recruit and then started at Alabama, all these things. And he honestly fits very well. He fits the archetype of what the Bills want at corner 2. But if Dane struggles at all and Levi continues to be Mr. Steady Eddie, I think you see that platoon. I think you see a platoon regardless. But if Dane struggles at all, I think it pushes even more towards the hand of Levi being your guy who sees more snaps at corner 2. Regardless, I think you're seeing a platoon. But in order for Dane Jackson to usurp and jump over Levi, he has to be on point almost every play and make big plays and do a lot of things that bump him up the depth chart, because the coaching staff really loves Levi, and rightfully so. And again, with a guy like Levi, he usually doesn't make a lot of mistakes, so he's not going to beat himself. You have to beat him. And so for Dane to see more snaps, he can't have too many rough days. He's got to string together a lot of solid performances with a lot of solid plays. And he has for the most part, but he did have a rough day. So I think that was important to note. And now we are going to start to go back to the comments, Comment from Griff. From what I've seen, it looks like Spencer Brown was getting work with the first with Dion out. I believe that is accurate as well. There's also that image of Spencer Brown standing next to Josh Allen in the huddle, and he towers over Josh Allen. He makes Josh Allen look like a very small man. Ooh, great comment here from Griff. Mckenzie's touchdowns were like Jordan Phillips' sacks. I like that analogy very much, very much, very much. Question here from T. Dobbs. Does Ed Oliver have that much needed breakout year now that Starr is back? Oliver needs to kill it this year. It depends on what you define as breakout. I think Ed Oliver had a much better year last year than people realized. He had to wear hats that he wasn't suited to wear. He also got double teamed a whole bunch. But yes, I think Starr coming back does wonders for three people: Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds, and Ed Oliver. I think it keeps Oliver freer. I think it keeps him fresh. I think it allows him to function in that 3-tech role and not have to wear the 1-tech hat. And it allows him to line up in multiple spots on that defensive line on the interior and just do what he does best, which is penetrate the offensive line, create havoc in the backfield for the run game and the pass attack. Yeah, I think, again, it's going to depend on what you define as breakout, but I think Ed Oliver has a noticeably, I think he had a good year last year, but it didn't really get noticed because he didn't have a lot of like the splash plays. I think it's more noticeable this year because with Starr's return, I think it increases the odds of Oliver being able to make those big splash plays, or the ones that show up on film or TV easily, because he's not going to have to play out of position and because he'll be fresher and be able to be more set up for success than he was in 2020. Oh, I appreciate that. Comment here, late to the show. Just want to say love you, and I appreciate you. Thank you for stopping by at all, and I appreciate the love and support. You guys mean a lot to me. Comment here, watch the last Miami game. Mckenzie was great without the 3 touchdowns. He is on the team regardless if he returns. That's fair. That's fair. I understand where the faith in Isaiah Mckenzie comes from, but I just put it together with also the free agency aspect of it. You know, he did test the market, and granted, maybe, we don't know. Maybe he got a really good offer somewhere else, but wanted to come to Buffalo. As he mentioned, he would have come back to Buffalo to play for Candy, but I wonder what the market was for him and what people see out of him. I do like Isaiah Mckenzie a lot. I like his personality and his attitude. I like his play style. I like the short area quickness. I like the burst and explosiveness that he has to his game. I also liked how, and he mentioned this as well, how much his route running has progressed ever since Cole Beasley has come to the team, and he's learned a lot from Cole Beasley. I love dudes that just continue to work at their craft, and Isaiah Mckenzie has done that. So it's fine having faith in him. I don't think it's a complete lock that he's there, but if he makes the final 53, I'm not surprised, but I love that you have your faith in him, and you know what? You should, and I don't think anybody can blame you if you do. He's been really productive, and he's an easy guy to root for and love, so yeah. Comment here from Griff, which I respect a lot. I expect Oliver to break out, but remember, it's unfair to expect him to Donald break out. That's a very good one, Griff. I mentioned it, how do you define breakout? I hate the Ed Oliver, Aaron Donald comps because no one is Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is the best football player in the entire NFL. That includes Patrick Mahomes and any offensive player. Aaron Donald is the best football player in the NFL. I know quarterbacks are the most valuable or the most important based on what will most likely lead to a team's success. But Aaron Donald is the best football player on the planet Earth. He is one of the best defensive players of all time already. It's ridiculous how good he is. Comparing anyone to him is unfair. Even if Oliver has a tremendous year next year, he's probably still not going to be good as Aaron Donald. You want to know why? Because Aaron Donald is one of the best of all time already. So, very good point. I like that. Comment here from Brian. He got to keep Zim, meaning Justin Zimmer. Dude has the heart of Kyle Williams, always near the ball. He is relentless. Yeah, Justin Zimmer being cut would hurt my heart. He had the hand of God punch on Cam Newton that won us that first game against the Patriots. I don't want him to go anywhere. I would love it if he made this team. I just don't know if he does, especially defensive tackle. I think you're going Starr, Ed Oliver, Harrison Phillips. I don't want to say Vernon Butler, but I think Vernon Butler stays because of his contract reworking this offseason. But I would love to replace Butler with Zimmer. but I don't think it happens. Oh, this is a great comment from Griffin. Remember when Zimmer kept up with Lamar in the pick six? Yeah, I will forever remember Taron Johnson's pick six, as I'm sure all of us will. And then Tre'Davious White hustling down the sideline to lead the caravan of blockers. Jordan Poyer leading the caravan of blockers. And then Justin Zimmer coming out as well. So I don't know if we'll be able to move him to linebacker, like you said, but that'll be interesting. Ooh, comment here from Nick. Stevenson will be on the practice squad for sure, unless Mckenzie can field punts. Yeah, Stevenson hasn't had he didn't have a great mini camp, and I know he had a good day today, but it's going to be tough for any receiver that's not one of the main four to make this roster. So we'll see what happens. And yeah, that special teams battle for Stevenson and Mckenzie is going to go a lot in terms of swaying who's going to go where. Comment from Nick. I'm assuming this is in relation to Isaiah McKenzie. Yes, he is. Dable uses him too much to lose that part of the playbook. I think the aspect of the playbook, I agree. He does use him in strategic ways, so that is accurate. But I think the thought is that Stevenson could do a lot of the things that McKenzie did. Again, I'm not saying that's what I think. I'm saying that's what the thought is going into it. So if Stevenson can show he can fill those shoes, that's where that potential aspect of, okay, like both of these guys do similar things. Who's better at this one? Who's better at that one? Who's better at this one? Who's better at that one? Weighing out and then going from there. So I think that's where the competition aspects come from. But, comment from Tony. Marcus Stevenson won't make it to the practice squad. He will be a returner on some other NFL team. We will regret it. Oh, interesting. I like this comment here from Tommy as well. The D-line has an arms up focus. If you can't sack the QB, get those arms in the way of throwing lanes. That's exactly right. If you can't get to the QB, get your hands up. And when you are Gregory Rousseau and built like a redwood tree, it's nice when you put up your redwood tree arms and get them in the way of the quarterback. So yeah, 1,000%. We've heard that going back to when you were little in football or watching, football on TV. If you can't get to the quarterback, get your hands up. Deflections are fantastic. They also lead to potential turnovers. Balls get tipped up in the air, interceptions. So all that stuff. Oh, also, I keep saying this regularly. Good comment here from Griff. So the cap savings on having the two starters on rookie contracts in 2022 or 2023, that's exactly right. So in reference to the defensive line, if you've got two of your starters being out of the three of Gregory Rousseau, Carlos Basham, AJ Epinesa, or if you've got those three guys seeing the bulk or the majority of defensive end snaps, yeah, the cap savings are tremendous. In order to get like premier edge rushing talent, you either have to draft it and have it under cost control, or you have to pay for it big time in free agency. And it's a premium price out there on the free agent market. So if the Bills can get premium snaps and quality from their young dudes while they're on those cost-effective, term-controlled rookie contracts, yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%. Comment here from T. Dobbs. An improved, stronger defense is going to help develop an even stronger offense from practicing together. That's a very good point. The whole, I know John Harbaugh, head coach of the Ravens, used it a while back, the whole iron sharpens iron type of thing, which I technically don't know if that's accurate from a metals perspective. But yeah, the defense going against the offense going against the defense. I mentioned it, I believe, in last week or the week before's episode in terms of the rookies, like Gregory Rousseau and Carlos Basham getting to work against Deion Dawkins and Darrell Williams in practice every day is a very good thing. Tre'Davious White and the corners getting to work against Stephon Diggs and Beasley and Manny Sands and vice versa. Those receivers getting to work against Tre'Davious White. It's all benefits, and iron sharpens iron. And I think, 1,000%, that's where that comes from. And yes, Tommy, CB2 is going to be a great competition. And hell yes, Daniel, I'm glad you pay attention. I have been obsessing about corner 2. I am a big secondary. I'm a big defensive guy in general. But yeah, I just wanted an upgraded corner 2. I wanted more scheme versatility. I wanted the ability to play man coverage and provide different looks on the back end. I'm content with Levi and Dane Jackson, as I said all along. But yeah, I've been obsessing about corner 2. I want to be able to match up against really fast receivers who run really fast. And that's not just Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman. I want to be able to match up and have the option of providing different coverages and schemes against different offenses. So yes, CB2 was high on my list, and it still continue to be on my mind. Oh, comment here from Jason. I think sometimes people forget that Dane is still a 7th round pick with very limited NFL game experience. I have hopes for him, but we shouldn't anoint him. He might need another year. Very good call, Jason. I think a lot of people see the pass breakup against DeAndre Hopkins and the interception that he had and the tackle on DK Metcalf and some of the crack replaces against Miami and see all those things and just think, oh, boom, plug and play starter. But I do think what's good going for him is coming from Pittsburgh, much like DeMar Hamlin. The system there is very NFL ready and pro ready from a defensive standpoint. They're well coached there. So I think he's got that in his back pocket, working for him. But yeah, I don't think it's too much to anoint him, but I think, a lot of people who think like Dane Jackson hands down is going to be the corner 2. I think 1, you're either overestimating Dane maybe a little too much, but 2, I think a lot of it comes from underselling Levi. Again, I know he's not sexy or flashy, but he gets the job done a lot. Comment here from Brian. Needs some competition for star. I don't see Harrison as a star replacement. Harrison is a strong support for rotation, but he's not star. I think what's very interesting to think about with Harrison Phillips this year. So last year he was coming off that ACL injury from 2019. Usually, especially big dudes, you tend to see return to form in 2020. I'm very interested to see what Harrison Phillips looks like in 2020. I think he's another guy we're not talking about on the defensive line, and rightfully so. Star coming back is a huge story. Ed Oliver's breakout potentially is a huge story. Rousseau and Basham are a huge story. But I think 2 of the guys who aren't being spoken about enough, AJ Epinesa, who I've spoken about a little, and Harrison Phillips. I think Harrison Phillips might be able to offer us really quality snaps as he is another year removed from that injury that took him out. Anybody who has a knee injury like that, it's going to take you a while to get going, let alone a 300-pound man who relies on his knees for leverage and stability and bracing himself and acceleration and agility and cuts, all that kind of stuff. But we'll see what we get for Star. Star isn't going to be the future at defensive tackle. We are going to have to replace him at some point, but this could be a big year for Harrison Phillips as well. I think he's a sneaky guy who may exceed expectations for that defensive replacement. Ooh, comment here from Jason. Yep, Aaron Donald is the closest thing to that singular dominant force we've had in the NFL since Lawrence Taylor. I wasn't alive when Lawrence Taylor crushed it. Obviously, I know how great he is, and I've watched a lot of him, but I think that's a spot-on comparison. I've never seen an individual dominate. J.J. Watt had some years in Houston where he was just unblockable, especially when they'd be able to kick him inside on the goal line or on 3rd downs, and he was just unblockable for guards and centers. But yeah, Donald has done it year after year. He is the closest thing to Lawrence Taylor that we've had since Lawrence Taylor. Great thing. Coming here from Michael. Anthony, what's up with the baseball hat? Where's the Bills gear at? Well, one, I'm a baseball fan. I'm a Boston Red Sox fan, so this is a black Boston Red Sox hat. But where's the Bills gear at? I don't wear Bills gear on the show because of licensing things. So you will never see me wear Bills gear on the show as much as I would love to, because obviously I love the Buffalo Bills, but I can't wear Bills gear, or at least I just don't. Anything else? Going through comments. Wow, there's more. I'm going to throw this up again from Daniel because it means a lot to me. Hit that like button, Bills fans. I really appreciate it. Ooh. Comment here from William. As you start to wind down in this episode of Disguise Coverage, as we're approaching the hour and 20-minute mark, go for another little bit because I see some more comments coming through. At the end of the season, who do you think has more snaps played, Moss or Singletary? What do you think the snap percentage will be across the running backs? This is a really hard question, and I hate you for asking it, but I'm going to think about it as I drink this water. I think provided he's healthy, well, I guess that's part of it too. I think Moss ends up with more snaps played than Singletary. And I think the snap percentage, is very, very close. I think like 40% for Zach Moss, 35% for Devin Singletary, 25% for Matt Breida. That's 100, right? Yep. Something like that. That's a good question. You got me on my toes. Yep. CB2 sticks out like a sore thumb, as does safety depth. 1,000% agree on that. What else are we going about? Anybody? Oh, comment here from Daniel. Harrison Phillips will be the comeback player of the year. Oh. Question from Tony. If Spencer Brown needs time, is Yates, I think you mean Bates, the swing tackle? Yeah, but I don't think Spencer Brown's going to need that much time. I think Spencer Brown is the swing tackle in 2021. And I hope he doesn't have to play. Not because he'd be terrible, just because he's still raw, and Deion Dawkins and Darrell Williams are both very good. But I think Spencer Brown, I don't think he'll need time like that. I think Spencer Brown is your swing tackle in 2021. As we wrap up here with the comments, LT was a monster. Bruce, Reggie, Ray Lewis, and Watt are the next closest comps in dominance. I love Ray Lewis, but Ray Lewis was a different player when he had Sam Adams, Tony Saragusa, and Haloti Ngata. He needed to be kept clean in some regards, so he was at least somewhat. He's still one of the greatest middle linebackers of all time, if not the greatest middle linebacker of all time. But he was still dependent upon other players somewhat for his success, whereas at least the others, Lawrence Taylor, Bruce, Reggie, Aaron Donald, they literally make their own success on every play, whether they're double teamed, triple teamed, one-on-one. Like, they're not as dependent on anyone else, and they can win almost independently and succeed independently of the others around them. So, yeah. Ooh, man, a lot of comments on this episode of Disguise Coverage. And I started to throw up the banner there for Toodles, you guys. That means we're starting to wind down. We're starting to say our goodbyes. I, as always, want to thank everyone for riding with me on this episode of Disguise Coverage, especially all of you who joined me live. The engagement has been fantastic in this episode. I know how excited everyone is because, again, the season has officially started. We are in training camp. That means preseason is going to be right around the corner. That means the regular season's right around the corner. We got the Hall of Fame game coming up, as someone mentioned. So, the excitement is high. And I can feel the energy coming through the chat even more so than normal. But yeah, everybody who rode with me live on this episode, thank you so much. Thank you very much for the super chat donation earlier in the episode. I say it every time, and I know I'm a broken record at this point, but I cannot express to you guys how much the monetary donations mean to myself and the Cover One team, and how much the engagement means. And I thank you, T-Dobbs, for that comment. Thank you so much. Also, I love cats, so I love that your icon is a cat. So I appreciate you even more so because of that. But yeah, I can't tell you guys enough how much the support and engagement and interaction means to me. It's legitimately tremendous. So thank you guys so much for riding with me live on this episode. If you didn't ride live with me on this episode, that's fine. If you listened later, watched later, whatever it is, I really appreciate your support and appreciate your listen and download. And as always, please rate and review and subscribe to Disguise Coverage, to Cover One as a whole. Please like this video, like the episodes. Again, I know it sounds corny, but it goes a long way in terms of helping us to do what we do. And oh man, some of these comments are really nice. Tony saying, thanks, Anthony. It was fun. Love Cover One. I appreciate you, Tony. Thank you so much. This one coming from Dominic saying, Ant, you're a genius. Thank you, Dominic. I really appreciate that. That's nice. Time out on this one. Oh, you're a cat guy. Guess that makes up for your silly favorite holiday. What holiday is better than Christmas? Oh, you're a Halloween is over a Christmas guy? It's so disappointing. I think I knew that. And I tried to block it out of my memory because I was so disappointed in you for liking Halloween over Christmas. But to each his own, I'm going to try and forget that you like Halloween more than Christmas. This episode got dark and disappointing. But no. Thank you so much to you guys in every way, shape, or form. And to all your family and friends and loved ones about Disguise Coverage and Cover One. We're trying to go very, very hard for this NFL season like we have in the past. And this will be my first full season with Cover One. Last year I joined after week 1 leading into week 2. My first episode didn't debut till around week 3 or week 4. So I'm very excited to have a full season under my belt. And I keep getting distracted by all this foolishness. Dominic, you too agreed on the Halloween over Xmas takes less money to make it happen. That's fair. I guess you're a pragmatic guy. In the olden days, they told ghost stories at Christmas. That would make Christmas great again. I think that would actually be fun. I would be down with ghost stories for Christmas, but wow, this is a lot to take at this point in the show. Oh man, thank you so much, Michael. I hate bringing up things that talk about me positively because I think it's kind of corny, but thank you so much, Michael. Said Anthony, thanks for keeping it humble and real, man. I appreciate your time, bro. I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much. Again, it sounds like a broken record, but thank you so much. That's awesome. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm losing my train of thought now at this point because my mouth is dry from speaking so much, and I'm legitimately floored by all the positive stuff from you guys. So thank you so much. Again, hope you and your family and friends and loved ones all stay safe. I will hopefully be able to put out some content this Saturday from the open practice, which I'm very excited for. And yeah, we are in full thrall for the Buffalo Bills season 2021 starting. I appreciate all the positive vibes from everybody who's saying goodnight and all that kind of stuff. Good night to you guys. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones all stay safe. I hope you are doing well. Hope everything keeps going positive and strong for you guys, just like hopefully everything will be going positive and strong for the Buffalo Bills. Football season is upon us. This has been the Buffalo Bills training camp kickoff episode. Next week, we're going to dive more into some training camp things, battles, competitions, where we stand as a team, where we stand in those competitions, what things are looking like. I am very, 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 very excited for the season. I know you guys are too. Again, I cannot express how much you guys mean to me and how much all the support means. Thank you so much. Go Bills, and I'll see you next week.